Hello and welcome to the Rabblecast. My name is Eric Hernandez, and Doug's not here, but he is on this episode. So sit back, relax. We're going to get into a few different subjects. What are the touch upon some movie trailers we watched recently, or at least I watched. I was bringing it to Doug's attention. I watched the trailers for the new upcoming Beetlejuice movie, which sparked an interesting conversation of movies that get sequels years, sometimes decades down the line. And the question is, do we really need those sequels? We'll get into it more. The other trailer we talk about is Alien Romulus, which I called out the new take or the new version of the chestburster scene. If you have not seen the trailer yet, I implore you, go check it out. It's a fun take on it, the way they show it, especially they show a lot for the trailer, so I'll give them that much. Sometimes you feel like they give away too much in the trailers. No, this one actually kind of made me excited, especially if you're a fan of the Alien movies. But that one really looked really cool. And then we, get into a bunch of different discussions as far as watching movies that are new IP versus old IP, movies as comfort food in a way, and the way that streaming platforms just allow us to enjoy old TV series and films, and just kind of works against the idea of putting out anything new, because why would I watch something new when I could watch a movie or show that I loved from before, or maybe catch up on an old film that I've yet to see from a couple years back. So we get into all that along with some wrestling talk. Yeah, I know I've been talking about it every now and then. Sometimes we'll finish up an episode or an intro. I'm like, oh, we didn't talk about wrestling. There's a lot of stuff going on in the wrestling world. We just touched upon a few things, like up until recently, I didn't know that Braun Breaker was, spoiler, part of the Steiner family. His father is Rick Steiner. Blew my mind when I learned it, but it made sense. And I'm happy that he's getting all the attention and exposure on WWE television right now, because he's an amazing athlete, an amazing wrestling performer. So I hope there's a lot of bright things in his future, because he's definitely a standout talent, and I want to see a lot more of Breaker out there on more live TV, or PLE as they're referred to now. So I want to see more Braun Breaker and him dominating in the competition. But we get into a lot of different discussions, different wrestlers, different companies. We talk about the G1, the competition, and Doug does a whole breakdown of the brackets. Have a few questions here and there, and then we go down the list of the different names, and we even get into some of the NWO Japan members, which I did not foresee that on this episode, but hey, you never know what happens. So strap in, have fun. Here we are. We are brought to you by InsidePulse.com. You can check us out over on the various different sections: games, comics, TV, wrestling, movies. You can also check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/Rabblecast. Check out the show where it's always uploaded, rabblecast.libsyn.com. Check us out on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and take us with you on the go. Make sure you check in with the Rabblecast Facebook fan page. Drop a comment, drop a follow. If you want to chime in with different things, send us a tweet at Rabblecast on X, and email us, rabblecast@gmail.com. Questions, comments, any stories you want to tell us, anything you want to share, any recent experiences, stuff along those lines. We always love hearing from everybody. And again, share, follow, comment, rate, subscribe, follow, whatever you're going to do. I think I've repeated one of those twice, but still, that's just to reiterate. Helps out, helps the show, helps get the word out a little bit more. And as always, as far as people in the community, the more the merrier. So this one was a fun one. A variety of different subjects, and a good discussion. So we hope you enjoy, as always. And without further ado, let's get into it. Enjoy the show.
All right. How are we doing, Eric?
I can't complain. For anybody who's been wondering, let me just start off by saying I got a new job.
Hey.
I'm sure my old employer is quite upset. There's a few more bumps in the road that I have to go over, but so far the new place is doing well. So I'm in the honeymoon period of a new place, and hopefully things once things settle down, hopefully all be for the better. So yeah, we'll just leave it at that for now because I'm excited. A new chapter, new beginning, all that nonsense, all those cliches. But at the very least, when I leave work, I'm not
Hmm.
stressed. Like
That's
it's
a big thing.
oh yeah, it's weird. Like I don't normally I would dread going into the next day, and who knows, maybe something will come along that'll you know re, re revisit that feeling again. Who knows? You can never tell with jobs and your bosses, whatever the case is, because apparently the place that I'm at right now, they don't have a department supervisor.
Hmm.
They have a department head, but the recent supervisor left like 2 months ago,
Hmm.
and until they find somebody, I guess they're like just blowing in the wind. So everybody's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. Just chill out, do your job, work on stuff." There's no real deadlines or anything currently, but once things get running, I would imagine things are going to get a little bit tighter. So for the time being, I'm enjoying it. See what happens.
Hmm.
How about
All
you?
right. Just still trying to get acclimated to the new position, and
Okay.
just kind of going on, and we'll see how things shake out. Nothing
Nice.
crazy.
I like that you and I both have like had transitions recently.
Hmm.
It's kind of nice. We can commiserate on the after show. So, there are a few things that I wanted to cover tonight.
Okay.
If you would indulge me, if you wouldn't mind. I just watched before giving you a call. I was trying to like catch up on current events, different things. One of the things I came across recently, and it's coming out really soon. I think in September 6th is the film I'm referring to is Beetlejuice, or excuse me, Beetlejuice. Wait,
That's
does that mean
correct.
he shows up now that I said it 3 times? Shit, I failed already. No, the recent trailer for Beetlejuice looks really, really interesting. Have you checked it out yet?
No, I haven't had a chance to watch it.
Any thoughts on the return to the franchise and Michael Keaton coming back to the character?
Um, I'm going to be the naysayer and say, okay, the first Beetlejuice came out in I think '87 or '88, something like that.
Around that, yeah.
Um, so let's just say '88, '98, 2008, 2018, 30, 36 years later. Did we did we really need a sequel?
That is a good question, especially nowadays, since the old argument is, why doesn't anybody ever come up with some new shit?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things like, even if it's good, it's still, for me, it's going to be a little bit tainted by virtue of the fact of, you know, did this really need to fucking happen? I mean, the cast looks good. It's cool that Michael Keaton's back and Winona Ryder is back, and I think the mom is back.
Correct.
Um, yeah, I know they killed off the father's character because Jeffrey Jones is a pedophile. It's cool they added, oh, bloody hell, I'm blanking on her name. She was Wednesday
Jen
in the new
Ortega?
show. Jenna Ortega, thank you very much.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where I feel like that the same way that I feel about Twisters and I feel about Top Gun Maverick and I felt about the second Independence Day some years ago. It said, did this shit? We both know the story. I forget the guy's name. The one comedian slash writer was walking through like a studio's office building, and they saw a room that just had scripts just piled like floor to ceiling.
Yeah.
And nobody's ever gone through those and said, "Hey, you might have some gold in here. What the fuck we doing?" No, they're just like, "Nah, this movie came out, 29 years ago, 28 years ago, 35 years ago, 37 years ago. Yeah, we'll just make a sequel." It's like, what the fuck, Hollywood? And you wonder why everybody laughs and hates your dicks.
Yeah, all right. So, on one hand, I'm excited for the nostalgia because that's what this is. Let's face it. We've talked about it before. They're selling our childhood back to us. Not necessarily
Yep.
that Beetlejuice was part of my childhood, but it was, as you said, like late 80s, early 90s kind of thing. So because of that, I'm excited.
Mhm.
The return of the character, to see what happens, the continuation. And it, from what I've seen and from what I've read so far, and this is kind of spoilery, I guess. Yes, you're correct. Jenna Ortega is playing Lydia Dietz's daughter in this movie. And
Yeah.
for whatever reason, Lydia needs Beetlejuice's help in saving her daughter. Don't know exactly what's going on there, but supposedly the antagonist in this one is not Beetlejuice. It's supposedly Beetlejuice's wife,
Huh. Okay.
played by Monica Bellucci.
Oh, okay. I thought you said OJ for a second. I was like, OJ Simpson.
No, that'd be
I was like, whoa, what the
wildly
hell?
different. Last film he ever did. No, the interesting thing about this one for me is because storyline wise, there's that one line at the end of the first movie where he's trying to marry Lydia, and that one like gruesome looking pastor is doing the ceremony, and he asks for the ring, and Beetlejuice like freaks out, and he's like checking all over his coat, and snakes and worms and everything are falling out. Then all of a sudden he takes out this dismembered finger, and on the finger is a ring. And as he pulls it off, he goes, "I swear she meant nothing to me." I'm like, oh shit! Like they're actually calling back to the fact that he had a wife. Okay, that's kind of cool. Like that little throwaway joke, if that works into the new film, that's kind of cool, because the only images I've seen of Monica Bellucci, she's like all stapled together and like sewn together pretty much, like she's all like a puzzle that's been put back.
Okay.
So I don't know how that plays out. I don't know exactly what happens. It looks like Beetlejuice at one point takes over the Afterlife Bureau, whatever that's called. So wherever the handbook comes from in the first film, he like essentially raids the offices and sets up shop there, only to be called back and everything else. So on that hand, like as far as that's concerned, yeah, I'll check it out. It's fun. It's exciting. It's it's a revisit to the franchise. To tackle what you said, do we really need a sequel? I'll agree with you. What was the first movie that decided like 10, 15 years after the fact that we're going to get a sequel to a movie? Because it's become the trend.
You mentioned as soon as we started talking about that, I'm thinking like, what is the movie with the longest stretch like that? And I can't remember for the life of me. So
yeah, it's becoming more commonplace where they're like, oh, you could make a movie like past 5 years and people will still watch it. Like, granted, it's got to be something that's memorable, something that's had some kind of like cult status. But yeah, like before, studios would fall all over themselves to make a sequel to a hit movie because they want to strike while the iron's hot. They want to make sure that the box office dollars keep coming in, that money is still filling the coffers. I think back to the first Ninja Turtles movie. Still one of like the highest grossing independent films, because at the time when the first one was released, it was an independent film. Then they hot-shotted part 2 and 3 into production as soon as they could, because they knew the lifespan of the cartoon, well, at the time, that they were just going off of what they had as far as metrics, that there was only so many years that cartoon was going to be hot, and then people were going to forget about it. So they wanted to make sure that they make all the money off they could out of the box office. Hence why second one, they made some changes. They appeased to some of the parents, the parenting groups, so that the turtles didn't use the weapons. They were less violent and a lot of other stuff. So it was a softer, kinder Turtles. Still Turtles, still had the comedy, still had the feel of the cartoon, but different than the first one, softer than the first one. Then the third one rolled over. What's that?
First one was pretty fucking dark.
The first one was awesome.
No, it was good, but it was. I remember watching it as a kid, and I was like, "Damn!" Like Raphael, damn near like straight up dies.
Yeah,
damn near dies.
And for any fan who's out there, or for anybody who doesn't know, the first one's heavily based off of the old Mirage comics, the black and white comics, which were darker and more violent. It wasn't until, again, the cartoon came around, then they started drifting that way a little bit because that's what everybody knew. That's what the kids were into. Because once the cartoon came out, people were like, oh, Ninja Turtles. And nobody really thought it was going to work out. The name is too long, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Who's going to remember that? Well, how many years later, it's a franchise that still thrives and has remakes of its own.
Mm-hmm.
But second one was influenced by the cartoon. The third one at that point, you no longer had the Jim Henson Company doing the costumes and the animatronics, and things changed a little bit, and the quality took a nosedive. So in that respect, I guess, because they were so greedy, yes, they kind of shot themselves in the foot, diminishing returns. Third one was pretty much forgotten by most people. Like, after the second one, things were and everybody says first one is darker and probably the better of the trilogy. So yeah, for stuff like that, like, I don't know. I don't remember exactly how we got back to, to Turtles, but as far as sequels are concerned, they want to try to make them within a few years of the previous one. That's where they want. That's pretty much why the MCU succeeded early on in their early phases, because they had a loose plan, but they kept putting out film after film after film, and filling in chapter after chapter just so they can build up to those Avengers movies, and then have the big payoff.
Yeah, but that's a relatively new phenomenon.
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
What's not a thing back in the old days. If I remember correctly, when they did the first Iron Man way back in 2008, they were not 100% sure that was going to have a sequel. If I remember correctly, they had thoughts and they had a skeleton in place, but they were not ready to pull the trigger on it until they got word from the studio, right?
Correct. Yes. So with that one, essentially, it came down to, they wanted to do other things, but they weren't sure if it was going to go past their first one. I mean, everybody, again, nobody in Hollywood goes out and says, I'm going to make a shitty movie. Everybody wants to make it great. Everybody is hoping that it's going to hit big. There was the interview with Jeff Bridges where he's talking about the filming process for the first Iron Man movie, saying that it felt like a student film for like a college project. I'm paraphrasing. But it was so disjointed. There were so many rewrites, and things were just, being just thought up on the spot that he goes, what the hell's going on here? But Favreau and company, they had this idea, they had this vision, and they pushed it through, and it planted the seed of something amazing. And you're right, like, that was not a planned thing. That kind of like grew into what it was, and then when they tried to replicate that pattern, they're kind of imploding a little bit on themselves. So, again, diminishing returns, but that one just took a little bit longer to get to that point. I'm trying to think of some other films that had like far-reaching sequels that you're just like, wow, like 10 years later, 20 years later, 30 years later. Blade Runner was one of them.
I have a list in front of me.
Ooh, I like lists.
Films that have the top 10 list of the longest gaps between sequels.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, this is from Screen Rant. I just looked this up. In the number 10 spot, we have The Shining and Doctor Sleep. That's a 39-year gap.
Wow, really?
Yep.
Huh, okay.
I completely forgot. I never watched Doctor Sleep. I completely forgot it's supposed to be a sequel to The Shining. I believe it's the story of the little son who has The Shining, whose name I can't remember.
Danny.
I think he's like growing up, and Danny, that's it. I kept trying to say Bobby, and I was like, no, that doesn't sound right.
Dr. Sleep actually inspired me to finally, because I was going to walk the track at the nearby high school. I was listening to audiobooks, and I finally got around to listening to The Shining. So getting to hear Danny and the audiobook version, I was like, oh, okay, this is radically different than the Jack Nicholson Shining movie and the made-for-TV version of it. So, with
I've read that the Steven Weber Star of Wings.
Yes, thank you. I was blanking on his name.
For what it's worth, I have been told, I never watched the TV movie they made like sometime in the 2000s, but somebody told me it's a little bit more faithful to the Stephen King novel, but I can't vouch for that. But moving right along, at number 9, with a gap of 42 years,
Jesus.
101 Dalmatians and 101 Dalmatians 2 Patch's London Adventure. I have no idea.
Huh. I didn't realize there was that big
Uh,
of a gap for that one. Okay.
I didn't know that either. Oh, here's another one. Okay, with a gap of 43 years, we have Easy Rider in 1969 and Easy Rider: The Ride Back in 2012.
Which I heard was not that great.
No, the only thing I know about it is they did an episode of How Did This Get Made about it, and I was said, "What the fuck is this movie? When did this come out?" And they were like, and I was like, "Oh, this is brand new. What the shit?" So,
Okay.
uh, coming in at number 7 with a gap of 46 years, we have Lady and the Tramp from 1955 and Lady and the Tramp 2: Scamp's Adventure in 2001.
I do remember hearing about this one, but I could never bring myself to watch it because I actually like Lady and the Tramp. It's one of my favorite animated movies from a kid.
Hey, like what you like, man. It's all good.
Okay.
Coming in at number 6 with a gap of 49 years, we have Peter Pan from 1953 and Return to Neverland in 2002. I can't vouch for any of these because I don't think I've ever really seen any of these.
Well, so far, these are like films that don't sound like they did very well. Because I remember even Doctor Sleep like didn't get a good reception at the box office. So here are examples of films that have large gaps, but did not really cash in on the nostalgia or the promise of a sequel years later. So okay.
Mm-hmm. All right, in number 5, with a gap of 52 years,
Jesus.
we have Cinderella in 1950 and Cinderella 2: Dreams Come True in 2002.
Yep, still not buying it.
I'm just telling you what's on the list, pal.
Okay.
And then next with a gap of 53 years, The Killer Shrews from 1959 and Return of the Killer Shrews in 2012. Huh.
I can honestly say I don't think I've heard of either one of those.
I've heard of the first one, never saw it, and that's as much as I got for this whole fucking affair.
Okay.
In number 3, with a gap of 54 years, we have Mary Poppins from 1964 and the sequel, Mary Poppins Returns, which came out in 2018.
I vaguely remember hearing about the sequel. Didn't Emily Blunt, wasn't she involved in the sequel?
Yes, along with Lin-Manuel Miranda, a.k.a. the man who did Hamilton.
Aha, okay.
In the runner-up position, with a gap of 59 years, we have Fantasia from 1940 and Fantasia 2000, which came out in 1999, because what the fuck?
Okay. I remember watching Fantasia as a kid. I don't think I ever... No, I never watched the sequel, but I heard of it, so I'm familiar with it. But okay. Still, like, none of these are like, oh my god, we need this.
Yeah, this is very weird. But and then finally, in our top spot with a gap 63 years.
Oh boy.
Bambi from 1902 and Bambi 2 from 2006.
Okay. I mean, not great examples of sequelizing a movie and then have it be more than 3 decades later.
Yeah, those just blew all of our examples right the hell out of the water.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, Beetlejuice seems to be just fine.
Yeah, they're like completely reasonable.
I'm trying to think, like, when was John Carpenter's The Thing? And then they made, was it a prequel that they made?
John Carpenter's remake came out in 1981. Yeah, because he went. Yeah, it was 1981 because he did that right before he had to go do Halloween 2. Okay. And then the remake came out in the prequel came out in 2011.
Okay, prequel, not sequel. Okay, falls under a different category, I guess. Trying to think of some of the other ones.
Hocus Pocus.
That's another good example. Yeah, and that was actually pretty well received. But then again, they also had Disney Plus as the vehicle for that one.
Yeah, and that's also one of those movies that's got such a fandom that people were going to watch it no matter what. And I know it didn't get as warm a reception as the first one, but I know a lot of people did like it. I don't know. I've never watched any of them. I'll never watch any of those movies. I can't stand Bette Midler. And And it also, call me weird, but it pisses me off that they decided, oh, Kathy Najimy, who's a really pretty lady, they're like, oh, we're going to make you the ugly, frumpy one. And I'm like, fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you.
Well, to
Because I
her,
remember, even at her age, like, I remember we saw her at New York Comic Con about 10 years ago, and even, like, she was just sitting at her table, like, signing some stuff and whatever, and I was like, she's still really pretty.
yes.
Fuck them.
And to her credit, she's taken care of herself. So, you know, depending on what you thought of what she looked like back then, you know, she stayed healthy, thankfully. So, even though they're trying to make her the ugly one, quote unquote, in the sequel, she looks even better. So, yeah, you can try to make her ugly, but I don't know. That's just, again, filling the cliche or the stereotype that they're going for, especially with the you know, those cliched version of witches are supposed to be ugly and nasty and got the warts on their noses and everything else. So, that's...
Yeah, but they still made Sarah Jessica Parker like the sex pot, though. So go, fucking what the fuck.
That's a weird one. But I remember, all right, so if you were a Disney kid out watching the first one, yeah, obviously you became a big fan. And those fans of Disney movies were always going to be tried and true to that film. And then you've got Disney Plus, which is now just the, updated version of the Disney Channel. So yeah, that they had a built-in audience for that one. That was a no-brainer for them. And supposedly they're going to go for another sequel.
Yeah, I heard that.
And that came mostly because I think it was Bette Midler at one point who went to either a park event or some kind of Disney event and realized that, oh shit, like there's still a lot of hype for this franchise or this film at the time, and realizing like all the merchandising, like it just was crazy. She goes, yeah, let's do another one. So she became a big proponent of making the sequel, and then finally they're like, okay, let's go for it. And again, feeding off nostalgia, they pushed for it, and it became a hit again. And I remember that year going to Spirit Halloween with the family, and you had all manner of merchandise all over the place. So yeah, it worked. In terms of merchandising, it worked. Whether you like the film or not, that's, everybody's mileage is going to vary. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. I can tell you one that was supposed to be made, but unfortunately it fell through the gaps. They were supposed to make a sequel to Buckaroo Banzai.
Really?
Yeah, they actually had meetings about it, and they had scripts written up. In fact, at one point, Kevin Smith was involved, and Peter Weller was even going to return in some capacity. But for whatever reason, it just never went past that phase, got stuck in production, got sold or, bounced back and forth between certain studios or houses, and then eventually just, died on the vine. So it could happen again. Don't get me wrong. All it takes is somebody to hit the right executive and say, hey, I need X amount of money, and we'll make a lot of money back with nostalgia once again. And you just got to convince the right person, and then shit like that will get made. I mentioned the Blade Runner before. That's a continuation of the story years later, but you also have the main character from the first one coming back. But that one's also plagued with the different cuts of the film, the director cut, the final cut, whatever, theatrical cut. Like, what really happened at the end of those films? What were the outcomes? And even in the sequel, they kind of like dance around actually what happened. But again, if you've got a fan base, if you've got that cult following, I guess it's a little easier to try to get a project off the ground in certain respects. Well, this actually leads into the next one that I want to refer to.
Yep.
I did not catch the release date specifically, but Alien Romulus. Have you seen this one?
Oh, isn't that coming out like this year or next year, maybe?
I think it's this year. I didn't see, or at least I didn't catch the end of the trailer for the date. All I just saw was in theaters. But
okay.
Whether it's I want to say it's a sequel. I don't think they're going back in time for this one. But, well, that's not true. Let's see, what was the other one? Prometheus, and what was the other? Covenant? Those were prequels to the first Alien movie, correct?
Oh fucking hell! I'm trying to remember
I'm
it.
asking the wrong guy because I know you walked out on Prometheus.
Yeah, and that was about the point when I tuned out. But at this point, I have no fucking clue anymore, man. Like I need it, if you want somebody to explain to you the multiple Halloween timelines, I can hook you up with that one. But if you want to know what's going on with the Alien universe, man, I'm sorry, I got nothing, dude.
Fair enough. Watching the trailer, it gave you certain vibes, and there's this one cool shot that I wanted to call out where they show the face huggers like leaping out of water, and it's creepy as fuck because they show like one person puts his hand up and the face hugger doesn't have full grip on the head. So you see whatever appendage comes out of the face hugger to lay the eggs is fighting to try to get into the person's mouth.
Oh wow.
So it's essentially you're seeing like this phallic appendage try to like hit somebody's mouth. You're like, oh wow, they can show that in the trailer on YouTube? That's wild. And then it cuts to the next scene where somebody has had one of the eggs implanted, and as they're sitting there and they're starting to breathe heavy and their chest is heaving, and you can see the prosthetic already working its way where the chest burster is about to come out, they take this lamp. I don't know exactly what it is. It's supposed to be like a infrared lamp or something, but they put it on their back and it shines through their chest. So now you see the silhouette of the rib cage and you see the chest start to swell. And they stay with the shot. Mind you, they do like quick jump cuts for the trailer, but they do this great sequence where you're seeing this updated version of the chest burster. Now, they don't show it actually come out because it's the trailer and it's a bloody mess, but they do show that the person that's with the individual who's about to involuntarily give birth to the chest burster, it cuts to the next shot and it's the same person holding their fallen friend or coworker or comrade, whatever you want to refer to it as, and blood's all over like the bottom of their face. It's all splattered and they just start screaming, but then it becomes like the next beat of the trailer and then they transition into another scene. But that alone, I was like, oh, that's a good take on the fucking chest burster. Mm-hmm. And that's once again playing off the nostalgia from the first one where the one character, who was the actor? Was it William Hurt? I want to say Jonathan Hurt.
Yeah.
And that whole scene where they're in the cafeteria, they're eating, all of a sudden it pops out. And the way the story goes from way back when behind the scenes was they didn't tell the people in the scene when they were filming exactly what was going to happen to get like some genuine reactions, and the horror on their faces says it all when you watch the first Alien movie. So with that, I'm like, okay, another Alien movie. Some of them have been hit or miss. Again, Alien Prometheus, kind of weird, confusing. You're hoping that Covenant kind of like filled in some gaps, got even more weird and confusing. And I think they're trying to do a series as well. I think they're calling it, I want to say it's Alien Earth. I'm not sure, so don't quote me on that one. But
okay,
if you know the somewhat of the timeline of the Alien movies, there is some like engineer or like, you know, space race that essentially like were involved with the aliens, and somehow like they engineered human beings. It's just like this whole convoluted storyline. You got to watch them, unfortunately, to try to get the most of it, or just go to Wikipedia and read the summary. But like the whole storyline, like a time of events, is just kind of weird. And the fact that they're still trying to make the films. Look, it is a franchise. It is sci-fi / horror, I guess, still to a certain extent. But those films, I guess, are still going to just be made whenever somebody says, oh yeah, let's make another Alien movie. So recently, Jen and I had watched 2 films. They're older films at this point, but we gave them a shot because they were films that I had heard about and I wanted to see what they were like. And for the most part, they were really good. Are they going to get sequels? Not a chance in hell, unfortunately. They were newer IPs, but for whatever reason, they just didn't connect with the audience in the box office. And I have to wait and see. The first film was Valerian. Did you hear about this one?
I've heard the name, but that's about all I got.
Valerian, I want to say it was like 2014, 2016, around that time. It was
Okay.
from Luc Besson, the same director of The Fifth Element.
Oh yeah, and Kiss of the Dragon, bunch of other stuff. The Professional. Yeah.
Correct. Yes. So he took this French comic. I don't remember the exact name of it. I think it's Valerian and Laureline, two of the characters in the comic, and picked and chose out of the different volumes of the French comic, and turned it into this film, which has some great concepts. Looks beautiful. Once again, like what they said with The Fifth Element, or like, oh, it's going to be the new Star Wars. Had they ever made a sequel to it, it could have been the new Star Wars. Valerian just takes that look of The Fifth Element, and because of the advancements in technology and CG, they just made Valerian just looks beautiful. Like, yeah, you can see there's a lot of CG work. They don't hide it, but the way that it was filmed, the storyline, like the whole thing, like you watch them from start to finish. If you like sci-fi, if you like adventure, it's a great film. But the two actors who were the main characters of Valerian and Laureline, Dane DeHaan, is supposed to be
Okay.
like a Han Solo-esque kind of character. Kind of falls flat on that respect because you don't buy him as the smooth sci-fi adventure. And then, what was her name? Cara Delevingne, I want to say her name was. Looks great, played the part well. It just, unfortunately, the chemistry wasn't there between the two characters. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
So the story was great. You had all these weird concepts, all these different alien races together. They show this one city that's like, it looks like a planet, essentially, just an amalgamation of different civilizations living in this like collection of cities on a planet. It was just like a weird, it's kind of hard to describe. But if you watch it, if anybody wants to check it out, Valerian, it's a fun film. The concepts were there, the idea was there, just unfortunately I remember hearing it that it fell pretty flat, and the budget just was pretty high up at the time. I guess it was Luc Besson's highest budgeted film, and it didn't make nearly as much as they were hoping for any kind of continuation of it, which is a shame because there were some great concepts in there. The other one that came up recently was Alita Battle Angel. Are you familiar with that one?
Okay. I've heard of it, never saw it.
So Alita Battle Angel is based off of the manga Battle Angel Alita. This one has an interesting story because James Cameron was originally attached to making it, and he got busy with the Avatar movie, the first one.
Okay.
He intended to go back and do Battle Angel, but again, he got busy after the fact, and then he said to Robert Rodriguez, he says, hey, if you can figure out the script, why don't you shoot it? To which Robert Rodriguez is like, yeah, I love the way this looks and sounds. Yeah, let's try to do this. So he like whittled down the script a little bit to try to make it more time friendly. And then anytime he had a question or idea, like he'd shoot out a quick email to James Cameron, and James Cameron, always being busy with other projects, would actually take the time to send back detailed responses to him, saying, oh yeah, do this, do that, use this character this way, and this for whatever aesthetics and looks. And if you watch Alita Battle Angel, like, again, it's a fantastic film. It was known for, they took the main character who is a cyborg, essentially Dr. Ito, who finds pieces and parts of a cyborg in a junk scrapyard, brings it back to his clinic, is able to resuscitate whatever is in this husk of a form, and it's Alita. Uses the body that he built originally for his daughter, rebuilds it, Alita with the body, gives the form his former daughter's name, and is trying to help it learn and everything else, only to find out that Alita, or whatever the previous cyborg was actually like a type of soldier. So it was actually like some type of like war machine, essentially.
Okay.
The main character, they gave her like enlarged eyes. So she has very anime or manga looking eyes, even though the film is live action. And for audiences, they were kind of like, I don't know how I feel about that. It looks a little creepy. But if you watch the film, after a while, you kind of get used to the look because you're keeping in mind it's a cyborg. And you see all these other hunter-killer cyborgs, different aesthetics, different designs. What's his name? Jeff Fahey was one of the hunter-killers as well. He's like this cyborged up dog whisperer, essentially. He always has like cyborg dogs around him that he sends out to do his bidding. You have all these different characters like put together. It's a great story. And Masahara Ali is the antagonist. Jennifer Connelly plays the mother of the former child of Dr. Ito. Christopher Waltz plays Dr. Ito from Inglourious Bastards. Edward Norton has an uncredited role as like the main bad guy up in the high city. Like you've got like a lot of people involved in this project, but because James Cameron was only a producer, not the actual director, Robert Rodriguez put his all into it. It's like one of the big movies that he did that wasn't one of his own. Also one where he wasn't every like camera operator and director, producer, writer, all that stuff. You know, far removed from Desperado and Mariachi. But we watched the film and we're like, oh, this is a fun film. Like this could easily have gone on to be a franchise. Unfortunately, didn't get the response that they were looking for in the theaters. So that's another one that they could probably come back to it, you know, once James Cameron's done with all his Avatar movies. But who knows when the fuck that'll be. Yeah. So sadly, it looks like Alita Battle Angel is going to, you know, lay on the scrap heap until somebody decides to either come back and reboot it or maybe continue it. But two films that were based off of newer IP and just weren't well received. If they're not recognizable names and faces, nobody really wants to invest their time in it. So unfortunately, that's just the way Hollywood and I guess the creative process goes. You can make new turtle movies all the live long day and you're going to have a built-in audience. You can make another Hocus Pocus movie and you're going to have a built-in audience. You can make another Alien movie or hell, Beetlejuice movie. And people are like, oh yeah, I'd love that. But if you try to come up with some new concept or new idea and just like try to like broaden people's minds or horizons, they're like, what the fuck is that? I don't understand that. But
unfortunately, that's also where we are too. But it's tough too because with how expensive movies have gotten and the proliferation of streaming, and things back in the old days, it would take quite some time for something to get out of the theater before it made its way to home video. Sometimes it would take 3 or 6 months, or sometimes even longer.
Yep.
But not anymore. I mean, nowadays it's going to be out on streaming relatively quickly. It's a damn shame, but it is just that's kind of how we consume media nowadays. On a quick side note, because it just popped in my head and I forgot about it.
Sure.
How funny would it be if in Beetlejuice, they edited the trailer around it, not to reveal anything, but halfway through, Beetlejuice is like, well, to take care of this one, we're going to have to go someplace. And Winona Ryder's like, where do we have to go? And he says, we're going to Hawaii. And it's actually the failed script from the 1990s that Kevin Smith talked about. Beetlejuice goes Hawaiian.
Yeah.
That would be fucking hilarious.
I was kind of hoping they'd play off of the original title that they were trying to give the movie, the first one. And it was Beetlejuice. Excuse me, it wasn't even Beetlejuice at the time. The movie was supposed to be called Scared Sheetless.
Sheetless? Oh, I get it.
It was based off of the prank of the Maitlands, when they're trying to scare the Dietzes out of the house. Quick rundown for anybody who hasn't watched Beetlejuice. The Maitlands die in an accident. They used to live in this one house in this nice rural area. And some time has passed. They return to the house only to realize that they're dead. And then this new family comes in and they're like radically renovating and redecorating the home. And they're watching their home that they loved and built and made their own essentially be taken from them in every which way possible. And their only response is to try to scare the family out of the home. So they do like little pranks and here and there and different things. It just like was amateurish by, ghost standards, I guess. And that's when the what was the character's name? The one with the smoke that came out of her throat.
I can't remember.
I can't remember if it
I
was
haven't watched the movie in quite some time.
the chairman. So the Bureau of the Land of the what was it there's the handbook that they find in the film, and then the whatever like bureau that's behind making the handbook, where the recently deceased helps them say, hey, if you want to get them out, you have to do this, you have to do that. So it gives them like more tips on how to scare them, be more frightful, be more haunting, essentially. Live up to the idea of being ghosts.
Hmm.
And that's where, they get desperate and eventually they get involved with Beetlejuice. It's funny that people don't remember that the first film, even though it's called Beetlejuice, he only really shows up at the end of the film. Like Michael Keaton's Beetlejuice is really not prominently shown in the first film. In this one, Beetlejuice, it looks like he has a lot more screen time.
Hmm.
So it's going to be like, if we go back to wrestling parlance, how long can you have them out there on the mic? Because can you have a movie sustain Beetlejuice for longer than a certain time limit? Or do the flaws start to show through at that point?
Hmm.
So that's where we're going to have to wait and see if Michael Keaton can actually play through it. From the trailer, it looks, I don't know, it's Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice. So if you enjoyed that in the first one, you're getting a hell of a lot more in the second one. My only question is, how far can they let the gag play out before you're like, all right, maybe this didn't really work out the way we were hoping for. So, and that's the unfortunate things when you try to continue the story, or in this case, sequelize it. You're like, this was a good idea on paper, but now where do we go from here? So we'll wait and see. I hope to watch some of these in the theater. Beetlejuice, I think will be fun to watch in the theater. Alien Romulus, I was never a huge Alien fan. I think I've only ever caught like 2 films in the theater. Aside from that, I eventually catch up with them when they were on the movie channels, and in this case, streaming. And yeah, you were mentioning before, like with the streaming and everything else, I'm also going to blame the pandemic at this point, because a lot of people, rather than seeking out new films or new series, they were like, you know what, I'm going to be stuck at home for a long time. So what movie have I not watched it? Or what movie, have I not seen in a while? Let's go back to something like a comfort food and just enjoy an old film or an old series. Like, let's rewatch Sons of Anarchy or The Shield.
Yeah.
And people at that point just got comfortable watching old stuff, and then eventually we'll get around to watching some of the other things. What was the one series? Oh, I tried going back to watch American Horror Story.
Okay.
And I was watching the first season. I'm like, oh, okay, I can see why people were enjoying it. I'm not rushing to watch the newest series anytime soon, but I'll eventually catch it on streaming at this point, because now, growing up, we used to say, oh, you watch it on TV, and if you don't catch it on TV, that's it. You'll be lucky if you catch a rerun down the line, or if it becomes the Sunday movie of the week. But that stuff is, also gone away. So now Netflix, Amazon Prime, or whatever other platform you use, yeah, you can watch a tried and true film and enjoy it that way. But I don't know. Again, I'm excited for it, but I completely agree with your argument of, do we really need a sequel?
That's really what it comes down to. And, I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, what the fuck? I mean, what the fuck are we doing anymore? I don't know.
See, I have a different argument for that one, because as we get closer to September, when the new Transformer movie comes out, Transformers 1, I was like, okay, do we really need another reboot of the Transformers? Like, I know I've mentioned this before, where like a character like Batman or Superman you'll have a new version or new iteration of it for a new generation, because that's how they continue keeping the character alive, at least the legacy. But I'm dying for a Transformers 86 continuation of that movie, the animated movie, which has been talked about and rumored about for quite some time. It's going to be different, because yes, you can replicate the animation style. It'll probably be some form of, CG aided animation at this point. But let's face it, we've also lost a large number of voice actors who used to do the characters, so things would have to be radically different as far as that is concerned. But I would love to find out what they would do with those characters continuing from that film, from that generation of cartoons. But
Hmm.
again, that becomes the argument of why doesn't anybody come up with something new? Well, because I'm comfortable with what I have in Transformers. God damn it! But
Hmm.
again, I talked about recently the 40th anniversary. It's fun to live in the nostalgia. It's good every now and then to take a look back, but ultimately we have to move forward. And if they can't come up with new ideas or new things to make money off of, then yeah, they'll go back to some of the tried and true every now and then when they want to make a quick buck, I guess. The merchandising is there,
Uh-huh. Always is, always will be.
so. But we'll see. There was something else that came up recently that I wanted to bring up, and will lead us into some wrestling talk.
Okay.
How familiar are you with the newer generation of some of the wrestlers? Out of curiosity.
When you say newer generation, are you talking about like the newest indie talents or like the younger guys on AEW? Which one? What are you talking?
Well, more specifically on WWE, there is a wrestler by the name of Braun Breaker.
Oh yeah, that dude. Yeah,
Do you know who his dad is?
yeah, he's Rick Steiner's kid.
I
Yeah,
didn't fucking know this.
really? Okay.
I didn't know this, and then over, what was it? I guess I was watching Money in the Bank, and they alluded to it, to which I then immediately looked it up. So I was like, holy shit, really? And then the story of WWE didn't want him to use the Steiner name for whatever reason, whether they wanted him to make it on his own or they just didn't want the baggage of the Steiner reputation. More
Hmm.
specifically, Scott Steiner, I would imagine.
I think that's more what it was.
Yeah, but I was like, oh wow, like I can definitely see it. Like he's got the look as far as in the face. His physique is amazing, and he's ridiculously fast when he does his moves off the ropes. Like whenever he does a spear or a shoulder tackle, he's like a
Yeah.
blur. But I was like, wow, okay. Even not using the family name, he has somehow still been able to prove, in an era where things were transitioning over to the new regime, was still able to show that he's got the athletic ability and the talent to be in the ring, especially in the current
Hmm.
climate. To which I was like, wow, okay, this is really fucking cool. Like this is what I wanted. Again, I stopped watching wrestling right around when the newer blood were coming in,
Okay.
and I feel. I guess I can say I feel slightly guilty because what I wanted for the longest time was like fresh faces, new matchups, new feuds, new storylines. And just when it started happening is when I was like, you know what, I'm checked out.
Well, I know you're also dealing with some pretty severe Cena fatigue.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, when he showed up on, I was watching Money in the Bank um, after the fact, after it aired on Saturday night. So I think it was like Sunday, I was watching it in portions. And as soon as I got to the Cena portion where he comes out to announce his retirement, I'm like, oh, yeah, I could fast forward to this. And I didn't know what the announcement was until after I was done with the pay per view.
Hmm.
And they're announcing, oh, this is the final year for John Cena. He's like signed to an 18-month contract. I'm like, oh, good. So now we're going to get a definitive end to his career. Sweet.
It's wrestling. Nobody ever really retires.
That's very true. And there was another story that popped up and said, oh, it doesn't matter what John Cena does going forward because no matter what he does outside of the ring, the WWE still gets a cut of it somehow.
I wouldn't be surprised. Well, I don't know how they have it brokered, but I mean, he's pretty much going to be WWE property as long as he's working.
Absolutely. And I think that's a remnant of when Vince McMahon was around. Because I
Oh
think
yeah.
Vince saw what some of the other guys were able to pull off and like, hey, if you make it big, a la The Rock, then we want a cut of that. If you make a few duds, a la Triple H, and then we'll just forget about it. You can sleep with my daughter, you can run the company eventually, but otherwise, who cares? So it's a weird one. Like he showed up, and I was like, okay, move on, enjoy the new rivalries, the new faces, everything that's going on with the new tag teams and the new storylines. Like, again, I'm going to give all the credit in the world to the Judgment Day, which is I should say, predominantly made up of newer faces outside of Finn Balor.
Yeah.
JD McDonough, Dominic Mysterio. Even though Dominic is carrying the Mysterio name, fresh face, new worker, going out there
He's
proving,
a young guy. Yeah.
yeah, but he's proving like he's got the skill to be in the ring, which is pretty fucking cool. You've got Damian Priest, who Rhea Ripley referred to as the bisexual Undertaker. It's just find like a funny name. And then I'm trying to think of some of the other people that are in there. I think it's pretty much it for the. Well, they included
Did you mention the
Carlito.
Huh?
Carlito is now involved in the Judgment Day as well.
Carlito Caribbean Cool?
Yes.
I didn't know he was back. Okay, that's weird.
They had some weird. It was the feud between Escobar and I guess it was Rey Mysterio. So they had the LWO and then whatever Escobar's faction was, and Carlito was part of the LWO, and then somehow like now got included in the Judgment Day, and he's had some really funny comedic bits in the backstage scenes. So I'm not watching. So for anybody who's wondering, I'm not watching Raw or SmackDown as it airs. I'm catching the highlights on YouTube. I'm catching any like replays of stuff like Rhea Ripley's return recently to challenge Liv Morgan, all that stuff. I'm just watching whatever's online and then catching bits and pieces of other stuff here and there for AEW, and then I'll watch Botchamania when it comes up, and just trying to keep updated that way, because I can't dedicate the, what is it, like 10 plus hours of weekly wrestling nowadays.
Well, if you're going to watch WWE and you're going to watch AEW and you're going to watch Impact and you're going to try to at least keep tabs on what's going on in Japan, you could easily probably spend 15 to 20 hours a week on wrestling.
Yeah, and I did.
I know, because I know some people who do that.
Again, for old listeners of the show, and as you remember, Doug, I did spend a lot of that time back in the day when this show was predominantly centered around professional wrestling, because there was just that much information to go off of. And now there is more so, like all the different podcasts and YouTube channels and commentaries and columns, and it's fucking ridiculous. But no, I'm finding the happy medium between just like catching the updates and catching the occasional pay-per-view here and there. Haven't watched all of them. Like I wanted to watch, what was it, Clash at the Castle, only because I wanted to see if they were going to give McIntyre the belt.
Yeah.
But then I before I even had a chance to watch it or remember that it was on, the outcry on Twitter from all the wrestling fans, "Oh, you screwed McIntyre again. I'm never watching WWE ever." Okay. Wrestling wins and losses don't matter. See example Cody Rhodes. Hang in there. The storyline is the build. It's the chase. It's you want to be along for the ride. So when that your character finally gets its payoff, hopefully, then you can enjoy that moment. Otherwise, get ready for a lot of heartache leading up to all those moments, because it's always a give and take, always a back and forth. And I don't even know if McIntyre is the heel or face at this point. He's very much a tweener. But they're just having fun with it. Like I said, I'm just enjoying the fact that the newer generation has come up at this point, more specifically in WWE. I have not kept up as much with AEW, although I've been hearing some of the signing news that have been going on left and right in some of the different matches that they're setting up for AEW. So again, I'll probably catch those when they air them on YouTube or whatever respective channels, just so I can get an idea of what those matches are. I have been trying to watch random wrestling channels that have been popping up in my algorithm on YouTube. And they're like compilations of finishers. And the best way I can describe it, it's like anywhere from like 10 to 15 minutes of just finishers from random wrestlers throughout the industry. So whether it be indies or overseas, Japan, Mexico, here in the States, whatever the case is, they'll just show you like the 10-second clip of who the wrestler is. They'll have their name and the little chyron on the bottom, and then they'll show the move and then move on to the next one. And the only way I can describe this, because it's cool at first when you don't, especially if you don't see or recognize a move and you see it for the first time. But the only way I can describe this is watching porn with just the cum shot and nothing else. I'm just like, okay, that was cool. And the next one, oh, that's even cooler. But like the fifth or sixth one, you're like, all right, yeah, that's devastating. But Jesus, this is getting kind of boring now. But there's so many. Well, I shouldn't say. There's multiple people out there that are just doing compilations. They'll put them together and then they'll release them in videos, which is great to catch a talent that you might not be familiar with and see them pull off a couple moves and then lead into their finisher or whatever the case is, or see some exchanges which are really cool. But otherwise, you're just like, wow. After like the first, I'd say maybe 2-3 minutes, and that's stretching it. You're kind of done with the video. Like, okay, I get it. This is all just devastating maneuvers. Whether it's a finisher off the turnbuckle or through a table or driving somebody's head into the canvas, you're just like, oh, okay. After all, I get it. So it's just like, if you ever want to feel burnout on wrestling real fast, watch one of these videos. But
okay,
it's an odd feeling, which is why every now and then, like, I'll have to go back and watch a regular match, whether it be WWE or AEW, and just like, all right, just enjoy it for what it is. Because again, with ring psychology, hopefully comes a good match, and with that match, hopefully you get some good results, depending on who you are rooting for or booing for, whatever the case is. But man, it just reminds you that, yeah, there is like the peaks and valleys in a wrestling match. It can't just be finishers all the time, because otherwise it'll be like the Young Bucks pulling off finishers 5 in a row. It's like, all right, enough. I've seen so many super kicks. We're done.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. It's an interesting one. And I was going to text you going back to the whole Braun Breaker thing. I'm like, I should text Doug and ask him if he knows. You know what? Let me hold it for the show, because if he knows, then it's going to go nowhere as far as the show is concerned. But if you didn't know, I'm like, oh, this would be a fun thing to bring up and see what happens. But damn it, you knew. So yeah, you have one up on me as far as that's concerned.
Honestly, at this point, some of my friends do wrestling podcasts, so I'll check in with them, and that's kind of been my guide of, is there anything I should bother checking out this past week in the world of wrestling? I'll just listen to them talk about like what they liked, what they didn't like, what they saw, and they can be kind of exhaustive at times, because they do, depending on which groups. Like right now, 2 of my friends, they have an entire segment. Right now, we're in, I think the G1 is about to kick off in New Japan Pro Wrestling, so they devote like a chunk of their show to the week's activities for that one. Oh, wow. Are you familiar with the G1?
Yes.
Okay. For those who are listening and don't know, G1 is a round robin tournament done usually like mid to late summer by New Japan Pro Wrestling once a year. It's been going on for quite some time, but in recent years, the methodology of it has been that if you win, first you have to win your block. There are 4 blocks, if I remember correctly. The winners of the 4 blocks, they have a match. They will have 2 of whoever of the 4 blocks. Then they basically go to like a bracket system. So then the 4 winners, they'll have like 2 of them will have a match against each other, and the winner of that will have a match of the winner against the other 2 brackets. So basically, by the time you're done, you have one person who wins. Nowadays, they use that, and whoever wins, they're guaranteed a shot at the IWGP title at Wrestle Kingdom, which is the first week of January, which is basically New Japan's version of WrestleMania. Mm-hmm. And one of the interesting things about it, too, is very often the IWGP champion will be in the tournament, and if they win it, they're allowed to pick who challenges them at Wrestle Kingdom. So it's kind of a cool format as compared to how Americans do it.
Okay. I'm trying to think if there was ever... No, never mind.
What were you trying to figure out?
It's... When you get to the brackets, I was just trying to like do the math in my head. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get lost in this mess as it is. Just leave it as is.
I'm not super up on it, but I do know if you're in a block, and I think each block is... Actually, hold on. I've got the... whatchamacallit. It usually works as like, I think there's like 5 to 7 guys in each block, and they'll all have matches with each other, and you get points. So I think a pinfall or submission is worth the most points, and of course if you lose you get 0 points and all that, and whoever has the most points at the end of the block, you've won that block. So that's how you get your 4 winners.
Remind me, is this a one night event or is this a multiple night event?
Oh no, this takes place over. Usually takes, I think, close to a month. Like it takes a while. Oh
Oh,
man, if it was one night, that would be one hell of a
well,
night.
I'm trying to think because like King of the Ring for WWE, I think this is where I was getting my confusion a little bit. King of the Ring at one point they had like even when you got to the finals, you would have like one or two matches in a night,
Hmm.
depending
Oh
on where you
yeah,
were in the brackets, and that's why I'm wondering like, is it okay? So all right, so if it's like over the course of a month, it makes more sense because that way they get more
yeah.
time to play it out and less injury.
Yeah, there's so many. It's also, I mean, like King of the Ring is straight up bracketing system, and if I remember correctly, for King of the Ring, at least, I'm trying to remember King of the Ring because they did it in 2015. I think they brought it back this year,
Mm-hmm.
and before that, the last time they had one was like 2002. But that was always they usually do for the longest time they would do the quarterfinals. They would do like the preliminaries and the quarterfinals on TV, and then that night they would have the semis and the finals on the pay per view itself.
Yes, which again,
But
having the multiple
Right.
matches in one night would just made it interesting at that point.
Mhm.
But
No, and
okay,
it's a little bit more formatted for that. But in one form or another, the G1 has been a lot around for quite a few years. It's just had different names over the years. Um, it was originally called the World League, and it started back in 1974.
oh really?
Oh yeah, it's
Shit.
been it's been around for quite some time. It's just had multiple names over the years.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, actually, in front of me, if you want to hear something wild, Would you like to hear the winners of G1 Climax slash World League slash MSG League slash IWGP League slash World Cup tournament?
Jesus. Sure.
Okay, I'll try to make this quick because holy fuck, there's a lot going on here. 1974 and 1975 were both won by Antonio Inoki. 1976 and 1977 were won by Seiji Sakaguchi. 1978 and 1979, 1980, and 1981 were all won by Antonio Inoki. Hey, if you run the company, you can book yourself into whatever you want, I guess.
I guess, yeah.
Uh, 1982 was Andre. 83 was Hogan. 84 was Inoki again. 85 was Andre. 86, 87, and 88 were Inoki. Um, God damn.
Wow.
1989 was Riki Choju. 1991 and 1992 were Masahiro Chono. 93 was Tatsumi the Dragon Fujinami. 94 was Masahiro Chono again. 95 was Keiji Muto. 96 was Riki Choshu again. 1997 was Kensuke Sasaki, aka the Power Warrior, aka the guy who had the cops called on him because he fucked his wife so loudly they woke up a whole hotel, but that's another story for another day. 1998 was Shinya Hashimoto. 1999 was Manabu Nakanishi. 2000 was Kensuke Sasaki. 2001 was their old buddy Yuji Nagata. '02 was Chono again. '03 and '04 were Hiroshi Tenzan. 2005 was Chono. 2006 was Tenzan again. '07 was Hiroshi Tanahashi. 2008 was Hiroki Goto. 2009 was Togi Makabe. 2010 was Satoshi Kojima. 2011 was Shinsuke Nakamura. 2012 was Kazuchika Okada. 2013 was Tetsuya Naito. 2014 was Okada again. 2015 was Tanahashi again. 2016 was Kenny Omega being the first American to win it in quite some years.
Okay.
2017 was Tetsuya Naito. 2018 was Tanahashi. 2019 and 2020 were both Kota Ibushi. 2021 and 2022 were Okada wrapping up his New Japan run, and 2023 was Tetsuya Naito.
Okay.
Yes, there you go.
Wait, how many years did Anuki win it in total? Does it say?
Okay, hold on, let me go back. So let me check here. Total one. Bloody hell, come on.
Sounds like it was more than 10.
He won 74, 75, 78, 79. 80, 81, 84, 86, 87, 88, and that is it. So he won 10 times.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, if you're going to be booking, why not?
Hey, if it's your company, I mean, Jesus fucking Christ. And also, but the thing was too, I mean, is for that time period, Inoki was over, man. Like Inoki was God when in New Japan. So, I mean, just by like, I mean, people don't realize like just by losing like a couple of like losing once or twice, or if he let a guy beat him, that guy was pretty much made. Like that's how he made Vader. Like he just lost to him like once, and that was pretty much the show, man. That made Vader a star in Japan, dude.
Yeah. And that was a whole different atmosphere as far as like fandom out there.
Mm-hmm.
So they were like lauded as heroes out there, and like you said, in some cases gods. I'm happy to hear that Masahiro Shono was multiple time winner, because his time here with WCW did not do him any justice. Like he came in as part of the NWO, like they were doing their outreach version of the Japanese version of NWO, or the faction, I guess you can say. And yeah, it brought him in, and he took the name back to Japan, but it's just like they could have done so much more with him in WCW. They just didn't know how to use him.
So. And that was the trick too at that point in time. I think it was because they had that long running talent exchange agreement, but time like it's also weird too, because when they would go to Japan, or when they were in Japan, Shono would main event against Hogan, but in the United States, it was Shono versus a brand new white meat babyface Chris Jericho.
Yeah.
Working like a preliminary match. So it was always, I never quite understood why he got treated that way, but I'm not a booker, so I don't know exactly what the fucking deal is with all that shit. So
they just didn't want to give him the top spot. Plain and simple. I mean, you could have had something like some kind of program built up with him, give him a mouthpiece, and have a manager speak for him, and go out there and cut the promos and build up a program. You could have done that, and well, let's face it, in Japan, one of the top dogs. But unfortunately, out here, relegated to like mid card or maybe like a curtain jerker. Never even sniffed the main event.
No, not even close. Do you remember the three guys who composed the NWO Japan?
Oh shit! You're putting me on the spot. Obviously, Chono's the one. I'm trying to think of the other two now.
There may have been more, but there were three like core members I really distinctly remember.
Go for it. I can't recall off the top of my head.
Hiroyoshi Tenzan and the Great Muta.
Yes. Okay, I remember Muta. I don't remember Tenzan, really?
Tenzan, he was barely a blip in the U.S. I remember the name only a handful from him showing up on Nitro, but he was a lot more prolific in New Japan, of course. It was just one of those things where he'd come over, like, stick around for a month, work a bunch of, like, matches on Nitro where they would barely acknowledge the match because they were talking about whatever the fuck was going on with, like, Hogan and Sting. And then, he'd work his matches and be like, all right, I'm going back to Japan to go do whatever. But I don't know. It was a really weird thing, the way they would treat them over there sometimes. But it was cool because I remember, like, Muta had that really cool, like, he would do, like, all black face paint with, like, the NWO letters, like, written in, like, around, like, his, I think, like, on his chin.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I always loved, like, even when I was a kid, like, anytime, like, I flipped on WCW when I was a little kid in, like, 89, 90, and I saw Muta pop up, I was, like, super pumped because he was so fucking cool.
Well, wasn't, no, I guess he wasn't. I'm thinking of Yuji Nagata, but no, he was not. Yeah, I mean, granted, he was included in, like, the cruiserweight matches that open up the show sometimes, but I don't think he was ever involved in the NWO angle proper. So,
hold on. I'm actually looking up NWO Japan. According to ProWrestling.fandom.com, the The following people were members of NWO Japan. The Great Muta, Akira, Big Bubba, who that was Boss Man, Big Titan, Hiro Saito, Hiroshi Tenzan, Louis Spicoli, Shono, Michael Wall Street, Michiyoshi Ohara, NWO Sting. Oh, Satoshi Kojima was in it. That's interesting. Scott Norton and Tatsutoshi Goto. I'm trying to figure out who the fuck is Big Titan. Yeah, I'm trying to figure that one out now. Jesus fucking Christ, fuck you and your fucking ads. Oh, it was Rick Bogner. Oh, that's why I recognize the name. Okay. You remember Rick Bogner, don't you?
He rings a bell. I'm having trouble picturing the face.
He passed away in 2019. You might know him as the fake Razor Ramon.
Thank you. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I think I brought that up one time where I was watching the one Royal Rumble where fake Razor shows up, and he shows up, and just as quickly as he shows up, he's gone. It's like, oh, okay, I guess we're not using that character for now.
Yeah, that was kind of a corny ass move on Vince's part, but whatever.
Again, thinking that they could get away with using the characters, not the actual faces that made the characters or the actual people.
Yeah,
it was funny seeing Glenn Jacobs, or AKA Kane, be a weird version of Diesel.
It was funny to think, because that was about I think that was like the second or third iteration of Glenn Jacobs on TV before he finally landed as Kane. About, oh man, I'm trying to remember. It was, yeah, I think it was about like a year after. No. He shows up in Royal Rumble 97. So he shows up in January 97, still doing the fake Diesel thing. And then they took him off TV not long after that. And then October 97 is when Kane debuted.
Wow, that close?
Yeah, because I know this only because Royal Rumble 97, if you're ever like killing time and you're looking for like an old pay-per-view to watch, Royal Rumble 97 is a weird fucking anomaly in the history of WWE. Business was way the fuck down. Like, they were in really bad shape. Like, they were getting absolutely fucking just wiped by WCW. They were still in the midst of the Psycho Sid, Shawn Michaels world title feud. That was not going great. They were trying to run Rumble 97 at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, hoping that that's Shawn Michaels' hometown, that it would have helped ticket sales. But even between that and I think like a couple of weeks out, ticket sales were so bad, they actually picked up a whole bunch of lucha guys to put on the show to try to help ticket sales.
Yeah.
And it still ended up like they were giving tickets away for that fucking event.
I remember.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Because I remember watching that not too long ago. I watched it again. And when the lucha guys come out, you were expecting more of a reaction. And even for like a local market for them, like little to no reaction when they came.
No, I'm sure there was like a handful of like lucha fans who showed up to check them out because they probably got shit tickets dirt cheap. But most of the fucking WWE fans are like, what the fuck are these guys? Like, what's going on here? But, yeah. But if you go back and you watch it, like the Rumble itself is, it's pretty cool. It's one of the things, you have some serious fucking star power in the match, but it's everybody before they really hit as like a big name, or like they were kind of like in like a weird, the character was down and they weren't doing great. Like, just off the top of my head, I can tell you in that match you had Bret Hart, Steve Austin, Rocky Maivia when he was still doing like the goofy third generation babyface thing. Farouk was in the match. I think Ahmed Johnson was in the match. Hunter Hearst Helmsley, the Connecticut Blue Blood, was in the match. Terry Funk, Cactus Jack, The Undertaker, Vader. There was a couple other names. Of course, Fake Diesel was in the match because he's like weirdly enough, he's like one of the last guys eliminated before they do like the big fuck finish.
Yeah, they actually let him get more ring time than Fake Razor, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, he got like, I think he was like the of the final four guys, I think he was like the last guy out before the final four, which was Vader, Taker, Brett, and Austin, because then they did the whole thing where, yeah, they were doing this whole, if I remember the ending correctly, that Funk and Foley were beating the hell out of each other. The referees were all distracted by that. Hart eliminated Austin, and then Austin ran back in the ring and eliminated everybody else and won the match, because a good chunk of the match was built around Austin was just chewing through guys left and right. And then when Bret Hart's music hits, he like freaks out because it was coming off of they were like reheating their fucking feud from like that past fall, and it was like really good.
Was that the infamous Blood from a Stone finish?
Or
was that later?
That was okay. I'm trying to remember the timetable. So Bret leaves after WrestleMania 12 in March of '96 after the Iron Man match when he drops the world title to Shawn Michaels. He takes 6-7 months off. He comes back for Survivor Series that fall, which was at MSG. Has the Austin match, which was a really good match. That was not the first one. Then they kind of like feuded on and off the next couple of months. And then at WrestleMania 13 in '97, that's when that was the Blood from a Stone match, because that was a submission match where the double turn went down. And also like pound for pound, an awesome fucking match.
Oh, that one was amazing, especially at the end where Austin doesn't tap and he just like passes out, but you just see him with a bloody mess on his face.
Oh yeah.
So, and
I mean, yeah.
Whoever came up with the Blood from a Stone line, I was like, that's just fucking amazing.
Like, oh my God. I mean, dude, you think about that. That was like March, April 1997. They ran that image of Austin with blood running down his face with him like screaming as the blood drips off his teeth. Dude, I mean, they've been using that. They ran off that image for like 15 years plus.
Well, even nowadays, like they still use it from time to time, but now they have to show it in black and white. So
yeah.
They're still getting a mileage out of that even to this day.
Well, I remember for a while, like when they were really pushing the PG thing hard, they kind of like took that one and they put it on the back burner. But yeah, I know they kind of like, as they've been kind of like loosening on that, they kind of brought that back.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
All right, sir. I think we've hit our mark. How do you feel?
I am very tired.
Well, at least tomorrow's Friday. Let's keep that in mind.
This is true.
So, if you made it this far, thank you for listening. My name is Eric Hernandez.
I'm Doug.
And we are the Rabblecast.